She also appeared on Howard Stern, where he said he'd even vote for a wall over Trump. Harris replied, "I'm not a wall, but I am plastered." New York Times opinion piece says we should abandon the idea of masculinity. "I'm way ahead of you," said one man.
Joe Rogan and Greg Gutfeld just pulled off the unthinkable. They destroyed Howard Stern live on air, tearing apart the ego of a man who once wore the crown as the king of all media. This wasn't just a roast, it was a public demolition, and Stern looked powerless as his legacy crumbled before everyone's eyes. What started as subtle shade quickly turned into a full-blown takedown that cut deeper than anything Stern has ever faced before. Rogan and Gutfeld ripped through Stern's carefully crafted persona like a hot knife through wax. No mercy, no hesitation, just brutal truth flying straight into the mic. Rogan, calm but ruthless, mocked Stern's transformation from rebellious shock jock to a sanitized version of himself. And Gutfeld, with his smirking sarcasm, turned every flaw into a punchline, leaving Stern exposed as nothing more than a relic of his former self. The irony was impossible to ignore. Stern once built his empire by mocking the establishment, yet now he hides behind it, clutching approval from the very elites he used to tear apart. Rogan and Gutfeld didn't just point this out. They slammed it into the spotlight for the world to see.
Say this, Dagan. I thank God for Howard Stern because he does make me feel normal by comparison. Because I'm like the Fox recluse. I don't do anything. I don't go anywhere. But he makes me look like, Pete Davidson on a...
Yeah, he's a germaphobe. Like, his wife rescues cats. That's her job, apparently, her thing. But you can get toxoplasmosis.
That's true.
Cryptosporidiosis.
AIDS.
And
no, you can't.
No,
but
you can't get.
No, you can't.
But you can get.
I mean, what are the chances I get that again?
Because he had the affair with Jessica Hahn,
right,
who was the secretary, the hot secretary, and Jessica Hahn wound up Sam Kinison, and they had
I forgot about that. Yeah.
They had a terrible breakup. They would talk shit about each other on Howard Stern.
What do you think of what Howard's become recently?
Well,
he's the only person I know who's gone, other than Penn maybe, who's gone from being red-pilled to blue-pilled.
Rogan laughed as he reminded the audience that Stern now lives in isolation, hiding away like a germaphobe millionaire while lecturing the rest of America about how to live. The crowd couldn't help but see the hypocrisy, and the more Rogan talked, the more Stern's image fell apart. Gutfeld jumped in and painted Stern as a washed-up rock star who traded in his leather jacket for a cardigan and lectures. The imagery was brutal, but spot on. Howard Stern was no longer the rebel voice of a generation, but a safe, scolding figure clinging to relevance. Together, they tore through Stern's contradictions one by one. This was no accident, no random roast. It was a calculated dismantling of everything Stern once stood for, and the audience could feel the sting of truth in every jab. Rogan hit hard when he pointed out that Stern has become the moral compass of Hollywood. A man who once reveled in chaos, now pretending to be the voice of reason. That's like Ozzy Osbourne giving TED Talks on pronunciation, Rogan joked, and the laughter shook the room. Every punchline landed like a hammer. Every smirk from Gutfeld drove the point home that Stern's reign was not just over, it was embarrassing. Stern wasn't being challenged by two newcomers, he was being dragged by two men who knew his game better than he did. The timing of the takedown was impeccable. As Stern's rants grew more serious, Rogan and Gutfeld only made them look more absurd, highlighting how the once fearless shock jock had turned into a parody of himself.
But that's how Stern can call snacking with celebs at a fancy restaurant exhausting. Exhausting. Like he finished the overnight shift in a coal mine, or hearing Kat talk about her pets.
fair.
But I get it, life is tough, especially when you've been cut off from the world for 2 years in a $20 million beach house. I mean, you have no idea how tiring it is walking all the way from the wine cellar to the tennis court and back. Do I sound jealous? Yes.
Look, what he did, I mean, look, people to this day, they make fun of Howard Stern because of who he is now and the way he behaves now. That guy's the man. He was the pioneer. When he was the king of all media and he was telling everybody to suck his dick and the FCC was going after him, the government was fining him.
Yeah.
They were fining his businesses millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And he was out there doing wild shit on the radio.
He was putting a Klansman on with Young Thug or
and
not
now,
Young Thug.
and now he's woke.
Rogan didn't have to shout. His calm disbelief was devastating. Every time Stern tried to sound profound, Rogan's eyebrow raised in mock confusion, and that was enough to make the crowd laugh louder than Stern's words ever could. Gutfeld compared Stern's decline to a punk rocker, trading his guitar for a book club, and the audience erupted. It was cruel, it was ruthless, but it was true. Howard Stern, the rebel, had become everything he used to mock. The roast cut deeper when Rogan pointed out that Stern once fought censorship with everything he had, yet now he embraces it, standing shoulder to shoulder with the very forces that tried to silence him. The irony was so thick you could slice it with a knife. Gutfeld piled on, mocking Stern's endless virtue signaling as nothing more than a desperate bid to stay relevant. Howard Stern is like a wolf that decided to become a poodle, he sneered. Same fur, none of the bite. The crowd roared with laughter. It wasn't just comedy, it was an autopsy. Rogan and Gutfeld weren't just roasting Stern, they were dissecting the death of his legacy, laying bare the truth that he wasn't the king anymore. He was a pawn in a game he used to control. The audience wasn't just laughing, they were nodding. They saw what Rogan and Gutfeld saw, that Stern had traded his edge for approval, his rebellion for safety, his authenticity for relevance that no longer exists. Even Stern's fans couldn't deny the sting.
The right is insisting on free speech. They were the motherfuckers that were censoring everybody.
Right.
They wanted to lock Howard Stern up in jail.
I was on Howard Stern's show. He was great at that time, and then he went woke. And since he's gone woke, his ratings have gone down the tubes, and he sort of went anti-Trump for a couple of reasons.
They sued him. His parent company had to pay untold amounts of money. How much money did Howard Stern's company get fined? It was hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions. Insane amounts of money. The government was trying to shut down a radio guy for talking shit.
He was very angry at MAGA. He said, "We've got to stop MAGA." And I'm saying, it's Make America Great Again. You know, it sort of didn't work so well.
And now that's the left. It's just patterns, man. It's just patterns where people can justify certain behaviors because it aligns.
Watching their idol get dismantled by Rogan and Gutfeld was painful, but deep down, they knew it was deserved. The man who once thrived on being fearless had become afraid of his own shadow. Rogan called it what it was, a tragedy wrapped in comedy. Stern, once the rebel who shook the airwaves, was now a man lecturing from his mansion, shouting at clouds while sipping wine, pretending he still mattered. And Gutfeld, never one to let a brutal truth slip away, smirked as he declared Stern the aging substitute teacher of media, handing out detention slips for words he once used himself. The burn was so sharp, it left the room buzzing. By the time the segment hit its stride, Stern wasn't just roasted, he was exposed. His contradictions, his hypocrisy, his desperate reinvention, all of it laid bare by two men who didn't even have to try that hard to dismantle him. The takedown grew sharper when Rogan reminded everyone that Stern once bragged about pushing boundaries with strippers, wild stunts, and taboo jokes. Yet now he lectures like a yoga instructor scolding people at a juice bar. The irony was so heavy, You could feel the audience shaking their heads in disbelief. Gutfeld chimed in with brutal precision, painting Stern as a magician who used to pull dangerous tricks but now only makes balloon animals. The line landed like a lightning strike, and the audience erupted in laughter at the image of Stern trading rebellion for harmless parlor games. Rogan's calm delivery made the contrast even more devastating.
Yeah.
And he was out there doing wild shit on the
He was
radio.
putting a Klansman on with Young Thug or
and
not
now,
Young Thug.
and now he's woke.
Miami.
It's crazy.
Trick Daddy?
Trick Daddy.
Yeah. Yeah, he has to be, though, because if, dude, the skeletons, that guy.
Yeah, look at this.
God hates.
They're doing the Family Feud.
Oh, and she
No, there's
escaped.
also Hollywood Squares, but yes.
Okay.
They used to bring them back all the time.
There's nothing in Stern's previous career that could withstand this modern witch hunt that he now embraces. So this is a form of restitution. Maybe he says, you know, if I'm woke too, the crocodile will eat me last, but they always do eat. But I get it. He flipped from populist to elitist because now he's with elitists. He's living in the Hamptons. What would the Stern of now think of the Stern of before?
He wasn't shouting, he wasn't raging. He was simply exposing the absurdity of Stern's new persona, and that cool tone made every barb cut even deeper. Stern's contradictions piled higher with every moment. Rogan reminded people how Stern once fought censorship tooth and nail, fined millions for his defiance, yet now he embraces censorship himself, siding with the same forces that once tried to crush him. The hypocrisy was glaring, and Rogan's words pierced right through Stern's carefully polished exterior. The audience gasped, then laughed, because nothing hits harder than truth spoken with brutal simplicity. Gutfeld added fuel to the fire, mocking Stern's obsession with being woke as nothing more than survival. He's like a crocodile, hoping he gets eaten last, Gutfeld joked, and the crowd howled as the comparison sank in. Together, Rogan and Gutfeld pulled apart every thread of Stern's reinvention. They weren't just mocking him, they were showing everyone exactly how the mighty had fallen, and the crowd was eating it up like a feast. Stern's decline wasn't framed as a slow fade, it was painted as a collapse. The man who once mocked Hollywood phonies had now become one himself, and Rogan wasn't afraid to spell it out with blunt precision. The crowd laughed harder when Rogan asked, "What would the old Howard think of the Howard we see today?" The silence that followed was telling. Everyone knew the answer, and it wasn't flattering. Gutfeld pounced on that silence, turning it into comedic gold. He described Stern as your aunt at Thanksgiving, who watched one documentary and won't stop lecturing.
This week on his radio show, Howard Stern defended wokeism, saying it's a compliment when someone calls him woke. Listen.
If woke means I can't get behind Trump, which is what I think it means, or that I support people who want to be transgender, or I'm for the vaccine, well, dude, call me woke as you want. I'm not for stupidity, but I am woke, motherfucker, and I love it.
Oh dear, he swore. He swore that'll win over the woke.
Fucked with him for 14 years. 14 years.
And that's not paid by the station, that's paid by him.
Fined owners of radio station licenses that carried the Howard Stern show a total of $2.5 million for content and considered to be indecent. Indecent. Like, why do you have those rules? Like, why do those rules exist? To keep obscenity from television and, like, maybe that was a good idea in 1950 when people didn't know any better.
By now, Stern wasn't just exposed, he was stripped of his crown. The rebel who once thrived on chaos had become a tame, safe version of himself, and Rogan and Gutfeld made sure the entire world saw it clearly. The energy in the room was electric, like the crowd had been waiting years for someone to say it out loud. Rogan and Gutfeld weren't creating a takedown. They were delivering long overdue justice. Howard Stern, once the master of outrage, was now the target of it, and the people loved every second of watching his empire of contradictions collapse under the weight of truth. Rogan then delivered one of the sharpest lines of the night, saying Stern doesn't fight the system anymore. He sends it holiday cards. The audience erupted, half in laughter, half in shock, because the line was devastating in its simplicity. That one sentence alone summed up the fall of Howard Stern. From fearless rebel to corporate cheerleader, it was like watching the spirit of rebellion get replaced with a gift basket from the elites. Gutfeld, never one to let a golden moment pass, compared Stern to an aging rock star who traded leather pants for judgmental cardigans. The audience roared because the picture was so vivid, so perfect, that it stung like truth wrapped in comedy. The roast then turned into a cultural exorcism. Rogan and Gutfeld weren't just mocking Stern. They were dragging out the ghost of who he used to be and forcing him to stare at it. Rogan highlighted how Stern once mocked Hollywood hypocrisy, political phoniness, and fame-hungry desperation.
When I watch them on Saturday Night Live with the where they have Maya Rudolph playing you, I hate it. I don't want you being made fun of.
Oh my God.
There's too much at stake. I believe the entire future of this country right now, I mean, as America, land of the free, home of the brave, I think it's literally on the line.
So a guy who's supposed to be funny for a living now claims her candidacy is too important to joke about. This is a guy who once joked right after the Columbine massacre that the killers should have raped the students before killing them. Not that I like that Stern, but this pendulum swing from saying the most tasteless thing in the universe to putting your balls in a Tic Tac container. You gotta wonder what's going on here. It's striking that the king of the most misogynistic humor ever now turns into a breathless over a progressive, hopelessly shallow candidate.
Yet now he embodies all three at once. The audience gasped because there was no escaping the truth. Gutfeld twisted the knife by saying Stern was like an aging magician, pulling politically correct rabbits out of a hat no one asked for. The crowd shook with laughter because Stern's tricks had become predictable, boring, and safe. The most painful part for Stern's fans was realizing that this wasn't just comedy, it was accuracy. Every jab, every punchline, every sarcastic remark exposed what they already suspected but never wanted to admit. Rogan's tone wasn't cruel, it was mournful. He pointed out that Stern wasn't just losing relevance, he was erasing his own legacy by abandoning the edge that made him great. The silence that followed Rogan's words was heavy, because everyone knew it was true. The man who once stood as the voice of rebellion now stood as the echo of conformity. Then came the knockout punch. Rogan leaned forward, calm as ever, and asked, "Do you even like yourself anymore, Howard?" The audience froze, because the question cut deeper than any joke ever could. The crowd knew they had just witnessed a moment Stern couldn't walk away from.
This definition of woke, it's if you call someone a know-it-all, you're not complimenting them on the breadth of their knowledge. You're saying you don't know as much as you think you know. So yeah, woke doesn't have anything to do with vaccines. What it really means is sort of a slavish devotion to left-wing ideology and then repeating it so you can get social credit.
Right.
That's really what it means.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you're smarter than anybody. And he had said in another part of this set, because I believe in the science. Well, if you believed in the science, you wouldn't be hiding out like Howard Hughes.
Big thing. Do they still call it Sirius XM?
Still Sirius XM, and I've heard that it's Howard's money.
Yeah, but he has so much. Well, first
It's
of all,
Howard.
if he leaves, they're
Oh yeah.
because that's like how many subscribers
Yeah.
will bail when that guy leaves.
Dude, I did Howard Stern show 3 months ago, and I thought he wasn't in the room, but the way they have that set up is you really believe he's in the room, like almost like a hologram.
They tricked you.
Dude, I was talking to Howard Stern, but he was in Long Island or wherever he was, Florida, and I was in the...
By then, the takedown wasn't about humiliation, it was about truth. Stern's contradictions had piled so high that his reinvention collapsed under its own weight. Gutfeld quipped that Stern's legacy was now a storage unit, packed away with his old soundboard. The crowd laughed, but the laughter carried a sting of finality. Rogan painted one last haunting image, Stern alone in his mansion, replaying old clips where he actually meant what he said. The ghost of his former self, haunting him louder than any critic ever could. The audience understood. They weren't just laughing at Stern. They were mourning what he used to represent. The rebel was gone, replaced by a man desperate to please the very world he once defied. And yet, even in their sharpest moments, Rogan and Gutfeld left an undertone of challenge, almost daring Stern to remember who he was. The message was clear: stop hiding, stop pandering, and reclaim the edge before it's too late. By the end, Stern wasn't just roasted, he was unearthed. Rogan and Gutfeld exposed the contradictions, the hypocrisy, and the desperate reinvention for what they really were. The king of all media had been dethroned not by rage, but by truth, and the laughter of a world that had finally moved on.